I do think the best writing advice you can have is to find that community of writers who support you, whether that looks like a book coach for accountability, support, and learning, like I had, or whether that looks like critique partners, or even just like my writing group. We get together once a month or even less sometimes, but we're all in a group chat together. So we're always available to like lean on one another for support, to ask questions. I can't imagine doing it alone, and nobody should have to do that. Every writer is looking for a community that I've encountered. So you find your people, and it makes everything so much more fun and so much easier.
Welcome to Raising Baby Authors. I'm Cassia, your host, and a brand new writer. If you feel overwhelmed and lost about this whole writing thing, you're certainly not alone. Join me while I pester my author guests for writing advice and find out how they do it. Because if they could, then why not you? It truly takes a village to raise an author, so let me share my village with you. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to the classroom. Thank you so much for giving me your time and attention. And let's meet our new mentor today, which is a debut author, Stefanie Medrek. Stefanie grew up exploring the beautiful forests of New Hampshire, where she lives and plays with her husband, two sons, and lovable pup. An avid reader, she has spent a lifetime immersed in fantastical worlds. She was writing stories as young as third grade, and her love for breathing life onto the page has only grown since. When she's not reheating her coffee for the eighth time or dancing around the living room with her family, she's hard at work on her next story idea. Hi, Stephanie, welcome.
Hi, Cassia. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I know you by proxy, I think. I've been listening to Savannah Gilbo's podcast for a while, and you've been on 2 episodes so far, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about that, but I think we should start with the basics, right? So, your bio does mention that you've been writing for a long time. So, how did that come to happen for you?
Yeah, so I think it's just something that was born in me. I've always loved stories. I've always loved writing ever since I knew how to like put a pen to paper and make words. I've been writing stories and like stapling them together when I was really young. So my dad is also an indie author, by the way. So I definitely think it's something that just runs in my family. I've always had that love, and it never even occurred to me not to write. So um, can't even say how it started because it's just been something I've always done.
Oh, so your dad has been doing it for a while then.
Yeah. He's been writing his whole life too, I believe. But how long ago? Maybe 15 years ago, he published his first novel. As of now, he has 31 publications. So he's
Wow.
definitely a great mentor to look up to.
Okay, so do you use him as like your beta reader or proofreader or just, I don't know, anything?
Yeah. He's actually my only and first alpha reader. So as I wrote the chapters of Into the Fire for my very first draft, I sent them to him as they finished, and like didn't even have a finished draft yet, and he'd send me back feedback. So it's really cool having someone you look up to and who you're so close to who really knows the ropes and can give you advice. Definitely have learned a lot from him. So I'm lucky to have him.
Wow. And I don't know, did it feel somehow that you had to have your first draft somehow perfect or something to show your dad or or were you okay with like just whatever you wrote?
I was pretty okay with it because, it's my dad. I know he loves me no matter what. I have been using Savannah Gilbo as a book coach for a long time as well. So sending chapters to my dad was not scary. Working with Savannah Gilbo at first was scary. So like it's definitely different sending to strangers versus sending to like a trusted loved one, at least for me.
Okay, interesting. So you've always kind of had this idea in your head that one day you'll publish something.
I hoped, but didn't necessarily believe that I could do it.
And how did you eventually choose your genre that you would be writing in?
It's kind of funny because I love like fantasy, action adventure, romantasy type stories. So I would have expected to write a story with magic in it because that's what I read almost exclusively. But the story idea that set me on fire, no pun intended, for Into the Fire just didn't happen to have that magical element in it. So I kind of chose my genre by accident. just because like I would call it a romantasy without magic. So what is that? It's really a romantic suspense, right? It has action, it has suspense, it has the romance, no magic. So I stumbled into that by accident, but it's something that I might continue because I did love writing in that genre. And I feel like there are not that many authors writing the type of stories that I write in the romantic suspense genre. So maybe I can fill a need in the market. Hopefully,
Oh,
is my hope.
okay. All right. I was just wondering, could it be somehow classified as a dystopian or something like that?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, kind of. That's a really good point. It is a lot like a dystopian novel, but it's set in an alternate version of our modern world.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it really classifies as a dystopia because, according to my understanding, they are set in the future, right? Where this novel is set like right now. So I
Okay.
don't know. It was hard to classify.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I think I've heard something like that from you talking on the podcast that there was some issues trying to define the genre so that it could be
Yeah.
marketable as well.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. So, and you have always thought to publish yourself like your dad, or you considered as well finding an agent and doing it traditionally?
Yeah, at first I wanted to find an agent and do it traditionally, mainly for the reason we were just discussing, because I was having such a hard time figuring out what the genre of this story actually was and where the best market placement for it would be. So I was hoping for guidance on that. Also, the validation of going the traditional route is something that I personally wanted. I had a little bit of a lack of confidence, so having that validation would have been amazing. I actually did query and get an agent, but it didn't go the way I was hoping. I sort of realized through that experience that I wanted control over the market I was going towards and like the direction I wanted my story to go in. So I parted ways with my agent, and that was when I decided to self publish.
Oh, okay. So it's like you did what validation and you got it in some way, right? And then well, once you have it, you feel better and you more confident in your ability even to publish yourself, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And so since you've been always writing, what made you decide that this is the idea, this is the book that you finally want to publish?
So it was really just the feeling of enthusiasm I had for these characters and this story idea. I've had so many story ideas through the years, and I never finished any of the manuscripts because, you know, life is busy, things get in the way. Like I've always had a million and one things going on in my real life, I guess you could call it, that got in the way of my ability to prioritize my writing. And only when I had like my soul on fire for this idea did I prioritize the writing enough to get to the end of the manuscript.
All right. And I'm just wondering, like having a father who's also publishing, who's helping you with your with advice, with alpha reading. Eventually, you did get a coach, right? So
Yes.
what made you actually get a coach? You kind of had, let's say, somewhat better start than a lot of authors, right? Like a lot of people who are writing and who feel a bit alone. You had your father to help you. So what actually encouraged you to get a coach?
It was because when I originally wrote what I call draft zero, which was about 40,000 words of like meandering nothingness, basically, I was really excited about the characters, but I didn't know, even with my dad being in the industry, I didn't know anything about plot structure, about story beats. I had been reading my whole life, so I kind of had like enough knowledge to realize that my story didn't work, but I wasn't sure why that was. And even with my dad, like he's not a teacher, so he can critique the writing, but like he wasn't like, hey, like you need these beats. Also, I will add that he's in a completely different genre than I am. So he did not know, like, he doesn't necessarily know the beats of my genre. So once I had gotten about 40,000 words into that draft zero, I was kind of like, I know this doesn't work. It seems meandering. I feel like I'm just sort of driving through the forest with no headlights. I don't know where I'm going with the story, and it's really important to me. So at that point, I decided to seek out help, and it was the best decision I've made in my whole writing career, I think, because working with Savannah, I learned so much. It made my writing a million times better. And she also provided things like accountability, support, and encouragement. that I did get from my dad, but getting them from another person, it only helps, right?
Of course. Yeah, of course. What kind of coaching did you do with Savannah? Did you do like the course that is for multiple people or a personalized something?
Yeah, so when I met Savannah, I was really lucky because she was still fairly new with her book coaching business. She didn't have the course yet. So I got that one on one coaching and a lot of personal attention, which was absolutely amazing because she's amazing. She really knows her stuff. That said, I did take the Notes to Novel course as well, and it's very comparable to her coaching. The only thing is, it's like a little bit less personalized. Obviously, she's not directly critiquing your pages, but you do have access to her for live Q&As every week, and all the material in the course are the same things that I learned from her. So it's a comparable experience, but I was lucky to work with her one-on-one.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, when I started listening to fiction writing made easy, I was like, oh my God, maybe I can have a coach, maybe I can work with Savannah. And then I realized that but she probably doesn't do that anymore. It's too many
Right.
people who want. So she would just do the group course right now, but which is fine. But I find that I, for example, work better like one-on-one, and in group I just try to outperform everybody for no reason, and like it's not gonna
I
really work
totally
for
get
me.
that. In school, I was that person too. So I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah,
Yep.
not working for me. No need for additional pressure, right? So I always ask about the first draft, but you already mentioned something called the draft zero, and I also have some experience with it, but I'm assuming our experiences are very different. So what do you understand under draft zero? How did you write it?
Sure. So there are kind of two versions of my draft zero. The first one that I told you about, the 40,000 words that I ultimately threw away because there was no plot structure whatsoever. And then what I now call draft zero, now that I know what I'm doing, which is basically like an outline on steroids for me. So what I do is I outline all the scenes, and I usually aim for 40 scenes. I use the 3-act structure, split the story into 4 parts. And for each scene, I brain dump like a huge paragraph of what happens in that scene. Sometimes I add things like bits of dialogue. There's always like a whole bunch of relevant details that go in there. And then Savannah Gilbo teaches the 5 commandments of storytelling. And for the life of me, I can't remember where she got that from. Maybe Story Genius.
I think it's story grid, actually.
Story grid. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a story grid principle. So I always make sure that I outline the 5 commandments of every scene as well in my draft zero. And at the end, my document is always giant because I'm someone who writes down a lot in my outline. So it ends up huge. And then when I'm done with it, I have a really good idea of where I'm going. And it's easy to just sit down and zip through the scenes and actually write them out.
Did you have to change a lot in the first draft based on draft zero? Like this scene doesn't work anymore, for example, while you're writing.
Yeah, I did. And I think I probably always will. Even though I plan so heavily, there are always things that come up and surprise you. And especially when it comes to subplots, I outline my subplots a little bit, but they really come to life when I write the first draft after the draft zero. So many times I have to go back to the first half, for example, and beef up a subplot that comes to life in the second half. Or I think of a plot twist that wasn't in my draft zero. I add it in, and then I have to go back to the beginning and thread in clues for the
Mm-hmm.
reader. So like there is a lot of that kind of stuff. For Into the Fire, I did move certain scenes around, delete scenes, add scenes. So I guess I do a lot of rewriting, even though I plan so heavily.
Yeah, but I think it does help after all, right? Like you at least
Yeah.
are not writing aimlessly. And for me, for example, well, I did write a draft zero. I didn't write the first draft based on that yet, but I found a little problem with it is that now that I have draft zero, it's harder to allow yourself to write garbage in draft one. It's
I
like,
also have that problem. So I feel you. Yeah. I'm a perfectionist. So, like, for us perfectionists, it is so hard, but you have to let yourself write the garbage or there's nothing to shape.
yeah, it just feels like I already have the draft zero. This is garbage. I need to now like write the pretty words because I already know what's going on. And then you get stuck in one scene for a week and it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Don't do that to yourself. Like, I did that writing Into the Fire more than I wanted to, even though I already knew and was trying not to. And it would have taken me probably half the amount of time and just as many rewrites and edits if I had just not done that. So try not to let yourself get hung up because, like, for example, if you agonize over making all the words pretty in your opening scene and then you cut the scene or change it, like all of that time is wasted. So you don't want to do that to yourself. Not that
Yeah.
I mean, I do it too. So I understand.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as a story structure, you use the three acts, and then
Mm-hmm.
you use the five commandments from StoryGrid. I think you're the first person so far on my podcast who mentioned that they're using the commandments from StoryGrid, because usually it's the beat sheets from either Save the Cat or what is it, the Romancing the Beat and others. So it's good to have some variety as well.
Yeah.
So if we go from drafting to editing, what kind of editing do you do?
So I look at like story level edits. So I take the entire thing. Once it's done, I read through everything and I make note of like character arcs, the five commandments through the whole story. So I try to apply the five commandments to like every story level, from entire story to act to scene, even to like micro scenes, beats within the scenes. So first I look at like the entire story. I make sure that the structure fits into my genre. So like expected moments for the action and the romance genres, I want to make sure those are in there. Savannah calls them key scenes. So if anyone else listens to her podcast, you might know what I'm talking about when I say I check the key scenes. After I make sure that all of those tweaks are complete, I look for things like I was talking about, like inconsistencies, subplots I might want to dial up or dial back, clues I can plant from the end into the beginning, and I thread all of those things through. And then only after that do I look at it on a scene by scene level and try to make sure that, like, not only is everything consistent, but the interiority is fleshed out. So the character's inner life and inner thoughts are fleshed out. I check the dialogue. And then after all of that, I go through for word choice and that kind of thing, sentence structure.
Okay. Do you hire out any of the editing, or you rely on beta readers, for example?
I do both only because I really, really, really want to make sure I'm putting out a polished product. I think that maybe people who are on more of a budget and find really great beta readers can probably rely on beta readers. But for me, I just want to make sure that I'm getting like all of the help that I can to make sure that my story is as good as it can possibly be. So first, I do all the edits I just told you about. And only when the story is as good as I can possibly make it, then will I send it off to beta readers. After beta readers, I will do, well, forgot to mention developmental edits. I do developmental edits first, then beta readers, then I'll do line and copy edits, and then last a proofread.
And line and copy edits and the proofread are done by professional editors or by you?
Yes. Yeah, by professional editors. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have education in that area, so I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right.
Yeah, of course, of course. I think eventually I'm gonna do the same. So just trying to gather as much knowledge as I can about this area. Okay, so your book has come out very recently, right?
Right. Yep.
So how has been your experience with your debut novel?
Oh my gosh, it's like I can't even tell you. Amazing. So definitely a great experience, but it's just so much like going into it because of watching my dad. I knew that it would be a lot of work and it is so much work, but just the emotional roller coaster is, you don't know until you experience it. It's a lot, really awesome, but so tiring. Like it came out, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and I still feel like I need a nap.
Okay. Okay. What did you do for the launch in particular to make it as successful as it can be?
So I really focused on social media strategy. I tried to show up. For me, I had to kind of pick one platform because when I was trying to juggle too many platforms, it was overwhelming and things were falling through the cracks. So I picked the platform that I'm most comfortable on, which is Instagram, and I really focused on social media push there. But I also hired a PR company called the Nerd Fam to do influencer boxes and ARC team outreach to influencers, and that was really, really awesome for me. It got the word out way more than I could have possibly ever gotten it out on my own. And it got my book into the hands of 522 people, which has resulted in a lot of reviews and quite a bit of social media attention around the launch.
Okay, so this is something that you could definitely recommend if someone has a budget
Yes.
for this kind of thing.
Exactly, but they also can't expect, unless you have a long backlist maybe, but for a debut novelist like myself, don't expect to make your money back either, because you make so little on each book sale, and the investment is like a heavy financial investment. So as long as you're okay with that and you're willing to invest in like your future, like my thought on the process is that this is a long game, and getting my debut novel into the hands of all these readers and getting all these reviews will result in like social proof, and people who love it will jump on my newsletter and hopefully be there for book 2. So I'm looking at it as an investment in the future. You could also, if you have limited funds, maybe wait until you have more of a backlist and then invest in something like the Nerd Fam, because the people who love your book will read through your backlist. So you would get more of a return waiting and doing something like that.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. All right. So, in terms of publishing and your strategy, what do you think is your goal? Do you want to like get a backlist as soon as possible? How often do you plan to publish? Do you have any strategy there?
Yeah, so my ideal strategy would be to rapid release and get a backlist as soon as possible. But I think I mentioned earlier in the podcast that my like daily life is just so busy that I cannot publish quickly and also put out quality work. So for me, the quality of my work is going to be more important than getting things out quickly. So unfortunately, even though I would love to rapid release, it's probably going to look like maybe about one release per year, just to make sure that the quality is there in my writing and that I'm not pushing myself to burn out, because I've done that before and it isn't good. I burned out one time and then I couldn't write for like 2 months straight because the burnout resulted in a huge writing block and I just couldn't get past it. So I want to avoid that. I want to make sure I still love this thing I'm doing, because I'm doing it for the love of writing. So I guess my strategy is to take care of those things and then release as quickly as I can while making sure like mentally I'm doing okay and that my personal life isn't suffering.
Balance, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds perfect. So, and in your bio, you mentioned you have two sons and a husband and a dog. So, how is your writing routine looking like?
So before my newest son came, I would get up at 4 a.m. most days to have time to write, where the house was quiet and I could actually focus. And personally, for me, I'm a morning person, so that works better for me than staying up late. If I try to stay up late and write, my brain just doesn't work and like I can't do it. So for a few years, I did that. But now that my youngest son is here, he is wakeful at night. Even still, he's almost 3 years old. He's still wakeful at night. So it's harder. So now I rely on his nap times, and just like if I ever have even 10 minutes to myself, I run to my computer and I write. I'm also lucky to have a supportive husband who will take over childcare duties so that I can have time to write as well.
Okay, I don't think I saw that anywhere. You don't have a full-time job as well.
I don't. No, I'm actually hoping this will be my career eventually, but I did leave work to take care of the kids. So we'll see.
Well, yeah, having two kids, it's two full-time jobs.
Yeah, and honestly, like working just to pay for daycare when I could instead be home with them, which is something that I personally really wanted to do, wasn't something that we wanted to explore.
Of course, yeah, yeah. So we've discussed your release, we've discussed the writing and the editing. How about a writing community? Do you have critique partners? Anything
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I do. I'm very lucky to have quite a bit of community. And I did get a lot of that through working with Savannah Gilbo, because, like I said, I went through her Notes to Novel. I was kind of in the first Notes to Novel group. So I've been in this group she has called the Story Lab. And it's kind of what she offers at the end of Notes to Novel for anyone who wants to continue working with her. So through the Story Lab, I found a lot of writing friends, a group of critique partners that we don't meet regularly. I wish we could, but we're all so busy that we just kind of meet whenever we all are able to. And it's amazing. I don't really have accountability through them since it's not a regular meeting of writers, but we can message each other anytime and get that feedback and support. I've found incredible beta readers through the Story Lab. So it's been a huge help for me, and having that community is a huge deal when otherwise you'd just be sitting there in a silo and like not having anyone to turn to for support and advice when it is such an emotional journey too. So yeah, I love my community.
Yeah, that sounds like a very nice deal you got out of your coaching. So much confidence, so much support, new friends, and yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how about since you've released your debut, what are your goals? Like, what does success look like for you? How would you like to see yourself in the future?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I have kind of two definitions of success. One of them, which is the one that's like success of my heart, is just that I want people to read and love my stories. And not everyone will do that. There will be people who love it, people who hate it, a million people in the middle. But if I have like a group of readers who love my stories and who anticipate the next release and who love my characters, that is success to my heart. But to my mind, success is also being able to publish these books without dipping into my own wallet. So I guess my other version of success would be being able to make enough off of my books to fund the next release.
All right. Yeah, that's a very sober and reasonable definition and actually achievable, which is amazing.
Hopefully.
Have you ever thought about producing audiobooks out of your books?
Yeah, I really, really want to do that. But at this point, I've already put so much financial investment into the launch itself and into the production of this book that right now I'm just kind of waiting until I get a little bit back, because I also do want to use whatever I make off of this book to fund the production and release of book two. So that would be the priority. And then if I have enough left after that, I can start looking for audiobook narrators that I can hire. I know there's also profit share models, but at this point, I don't know if anyone would be that interested since it's a brand new debut novel. So maybe in the future, too, like once it has gotten even more reviews and readers, maybe I could get someone interested in narrating it for a profit share. So definitely something I'm looking to do in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking Anne Caudle about her experience with an audiobook. She did do it, but yeah, she did admit that it's quite a an investment if you
Yeah.
want to do it, and it's not paying off right away for sure. That's not something that's gonna quickly pay off. So, in terms of financing the second book and in general getting returns back on your investment, what do you do for promotion besides like the initial launch arc readers and PR boxes and stuff like that? What else do you do?
Yeah, so far right now I'm just taking a little break from everything because the launch was so much work. It was very intensive that I just need like that mental break for a couple of weeks. But after that, I'm going to dive back into social media and push that as hard as I can. Not only speaking on my social media channels about my book, though, like I want to bring value to my followers and also talk about my book. So I'm going to focus on trying to do that and find that balance on social media. I'm also going to focus on trying to get into local bookstores, which is something I wanted to do before the launch, but didn't have time for. And then other opportunities like coming on this podcast just to get the word out that my book exists. Also, maybe paid ad campaigns. That's not something I've really looked into yet, but I'm going to have to do some research and see what that might look like for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard different opinions from different authors. Some do paid ads, some don't. Some do only Facebook, for example, or only Amazon and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely some research that needs to be done there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so have you thought about like branding or your like personal brand or something? Has that been a part of your strategy as well?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that crystallized after I parted ways with my agent because, like I said, that was something I was hoping they would provide for me. And then through working with them, realized like I don't want it provided to me. I want to make it for myself. So my brand, I would say, is angsty, suspenseful action romance with flawed but powerful characters who learn their strength and stand up for what they believe in. And I think the cover of my novel kind of gives like a picture of the vibe that I want to go for. It's black with like burning burning roses and a starry night sky behind. Kind of just, it has the feel that I want my brand to have.
All right. Yeah. I mean, have you worked with anyone on the branding or was it just you?
No, well, kind of the nerd fam. When we were doing the PR boxes, I did speak with them about branding a bit and use some of their advice, but mostly it's just been me trying to figure out, mainly by asking myself the question, like, what do I want to make the reader feel? And then what sorts of like images and graphics, etc., will evoke that feeling.
All right. Yeah, that's something to think about as well, because I have no idea even what to consider
Yeah.
a brand for myself. There's a lot of things that authors keep obsessing about. It's brand, it's the voice, and it's like so many different things. What do you consider? Did you find your author voice yet, and what is it?
Yeah, so I think voice is kind of a combination of like yourself and your characters and everything you read, right? Like you're going to pull what you read into your author voice naturally without even realizing it. So, like if you read a lot of romanticises, for example, you're probably going to sound like a romanticy, but it's also making sure that you stay true to like your unique words and like your unique feelings and thoughts, and then filtering those through the mind of your characters. So I think the only way to find it is to write, and to write a lot. And the more you get to know your characters, the more unique their voices become, which like affects how your voice appears on the page, right? So it's kind of a combination of things, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even thinking about finding a voice or whatever. I think as someone who's writing just like a first draft of the first book, this is not something I should be concerned with. I was just thinking recently that it can turn a person lazy. Let me explain. So you are writing something and you are maybe not very happy with how it looks like on the page, and then you're like, but that other author uses such pretty words, and like he can say it or she can say it so much better than I do. And then you're kind of like, no, but this is my voice, this is how I write. And it's kind of like, no, but you should try harder, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to use it as a crutch or anything. And finding voice is so important. Like that's how the reader is getting into the head of your characters. So finding that unique voice, but making it quality, like a quality voice, is super important.
Yeah, not just like I start all my sentences with I, and that's my voice because I don't
Yeah,
know
you
how
don't
else
want
to
to do
write.
that. Definitely not.
Yeah, because yeah, this is something that came to my mind because I was like complaining about not being able to write as pretty as some other author, and someone told me, "But you write the way you write. It's like it's yours," which is a great advice, not to compare yourself to others, but also kind of can get you a bit lazy.
Yeah, as long as you're on guard for it, you'll be fine. But you definitely want to be the best version of you, right? So
Of course. Yeah, since I kind of started mentioning things about like being unsure about your voice and stuff like that, how about imposter syndrome? Does that still touch you, even with a father who's
yes,
so good and can check your,
yes.
and a coach and everybody? No?
It definitely does. And it's kind of funny because when I wrote my first draft of Into the Fire, like after the draft zero, when I was writing the real draft, I was so excited and like so like enthusiastic. I was just writing, 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 writing. It literally didn't touch me at all, the entire draft. But ever since then, I've had like more and more imposter syndrome, which thinking about it logically, I would have expected it to be the other way around, that the more you write, the less imposter syndrome you have. But for me, it's like I have higher expectations of myself. So, especially going back to the first draft in the draft zero phase after publishing this book, I've found myself just like buried in imposter syndrome and having to try to remember how to write that messy draft and not let it be perfect.
Wow. Yeah, actually, I think this is a great point that you make. You have higher expectations. Not that you have a lot, not that you don't have a lot of support, but because of all this foundation, you expect yourself to be better than this messy
Yeah,
first draft that you're looking at.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
and
this sense,
I am that perfectionist, so like letting the first draft be messy is already so hard for me. But then like I look at, for example, a flaw someone pointed out in a review, and then I'm like, oh my God, I can't make that mistake again in book two. Or I look at like a glowing review and I say, I have to make sure I live up to this in book two. And it's comparing to book one, and it's just a whole new level of imposter syndrome once you get past that first book.
oh yeah, there's so many things that can
Yeah.
can lead you to think that you're an imposter. So you read your reviews then.
Not anymore. Not
What happened?
anymore. I did at first. I love your podcast. So I heard someone, and I can't remember who it was, mention on your podcast to just never read reviews. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to start smart and just never read them even from the first day. But I had this crushing anxiety that they were all terrible. So I had to look at them because it was worse not knowing than just knowing. Like, even if they were all terrible, at least I would know. So I looked, but I am not someone with the thickest skin. So for my mental health, like I did have some amazing reviews and it was wonderful, but even a 4-star review that points out like one thing wrong would get under my skin. And even if they're completely right, which lots of times they are, right? And reviewers are definitely entitled to their opinions. They're valid, but they can get under my skin really easily. And where I'm already dealing with book two imposter syndrome, I just decided, at least for now, to just follow that original advice and not look until I get through the draft of book two. Then I can look. I also do have someone who's kind enough to send me screenshots of really great reviews, so I still get to see those. And I'll probably ask them to go through and check for like common threads of feedback on things that I can improve, so I can still learn from the reviews, but also protect my mental health at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to mention because some other author also said, yeah, ask someone to screenshot the good ones, and if there are bad ones, ask them to go through them and like to see if there's any like constructive feedback there and give it to
Yeah.
you when you're ready, like when you're ready for the
Yeah.
feedback.
And I also think I just want other authors to know that, in my opinion, anyways, it's okay to ask your ARC team not to DM you negative feedback or tag you in negative reviews. I did that with my ARC team and they were extremely respectful of my boundaries. I think most readers really are, and they want to be good to the authors, even if they didn't necessarily like their work. So in general, I think that's something that's okay to do. And like your boundaries are important too. So as long as you're respectful of your readers and they know that it's okay to leave a negative review, I think it's okay to set those boundaries and protect yourself.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with people just telling an author straight in the DM that they didn't like their book. I don't understand. Why would you want to be mean on purpose? But okay. Yeah, that's definitely something that our creators should know by default, but okay, if it needs to be said, then it needs to be said, of course.
Yeah, and I've been lucky. I haven't had to deal with anyone doing that yet. So I think they were happy to listen to that boundary, which is so great.
Yeah, but I think you need to remember with like the next books, it's eventually it's gonna happen because people are
I
people.
know. Yeah, it happens to everyone. I'm waiting. Hasn't happened yet, but when it does, I'll deal with it.
Yeah, you have a great support system. You have great friends. You have, I bet your father also got a bunch of things like that in his career.
Yeah, he's like me. He doesn't look at his reviews either. And he has my mom actually screenshot the good ones and send them his way. So maybe that's something a policy I'll keep forever.
That sounds like a very good plan. Since we're coming up to the last block of questions, let's talk about writing advice. Do you have any best or worst or both writing advice that you would like to share?
Yeah, so I do think the best writing advice you can have is to find that community of writers who support you, whether that looks like a book coach for accountability, support, and learning, like I had, or whether that looks like critique partners, or even just like my writing group, we get together like once a month or even less sometimes, but we're all in a group chat together, so we're always available to like lean on one another for support, to ask questions. I can't imagine doing it alone. And nobody should have to do that. Every writer is looking for a community that I've encountered. So you find your people, and it makes everything so much more fun and so much easier.
Yeah, I would agree. I probably wouldn't agree half a year ago, but I thought I could do everything on my own. I could talk to maybe some people online, but then you got so much in your head that you need someone. You need someone
Yeah.
to look at,
Yeah.
or
And
at
even
least.
just brainstorming and bouncing ideas off of another person. Like I've found some of my most creative ideas through conversations like that.
Yeah, and even if it's not entirely about ideas or stories, just venting about your
Ugh,
problems, about anything,
yeah.
for to people who do the same things and who understand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an entirely different experience venting to like one of my writing friends versus venting to my husband who cares very much but just doesn't understand what I'm talking about.
Exactly, exactly. It's I have the same kind of experience. It's hard to express. He's just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I get it.
Yeah, like I don't get it. Sorry.
Yeah, of course. Since you passed your first launch already, is there anything that you would tell yourself before you launched the book or before you wrote the book? Some advice that would have given yourself that could have helped?
Well, I wish I could go back and tell myself just to go straight to the self published route because it just would have saved me so much time. But on the other hand, I learned a lot going the trad route and then parting ways with my agent that I would never have learned without having done that. So although I do kind of wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, just go straight for what you want to do, have confidence in your ideas, maybe I actually wouldn't because I did learn a lot doing that. I would also just tell myself to sort of manage my expectations because although logically going into the launch, I knew that it's like waiting outside for lightning to hit you, having your first book take off. I also still had a lot of hope for that. And not that I'm disappointed in how the launch went because it was amazing, but I was hoping that I would be that viral success. And it is like waiting to get struck by lightning, right? That happens to so few people. So just managing expectations, both financially and emotionally, going into the launch would have been something I wish I could have told myself to do a little bit more.
From an outsider perspective, I've watched you post on Instagram. I've watched people getting your PR boxes. I would say viral, no viral, your launch, it looked very professional and it looked like you've put a lot of work into it
Oh
and
my
you
gosh, yeah.
and you did the best you could with the resources you had, and you had a great
Thank
launch. So
you.
many people got your PR box, so many people have read your book, and I think the definition, like, viral, no viral here, is it's sometimes not great to be viral because with all of the sales and success comes a lot of people who start saying that, I don't know, book talk ruined books for me. How is that even
uh,
published and things like that.
yeah,
Because
that's a good point.
your book eventually gets into the hands of people who are not supposed to read it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a super good perspective on that.
Yeah, not your target audience. Just because the book is so popular, they start reading it and they don't like it because this is not what they read. And then this kind of virality is expected from you in the next book and the next book and the next book, and then it kind of fizzles out. I would say from a lot of authors on the podcast, I've heard that it's just better to stick it out. And what did Rhea Fox told me? I think around the book 8 or 10 or something like that. It's supposed to be like a steady situation. So you have lots of people reading your backlist and stuff like that.
Thank you for the kind words on my launch, by the way. It was a lot of work, so it's amazing to hear that it like looked to an outsider like I was hoping it would look. So that's awesome. And you're so right about being slow and steady. Like I've always told myself it's a long game, so I just have to remember that. And yeah, who wants all that negative attention that comes with going viral? I definitely don't.
I mean, let's see if this happens for you. Then we're gonna have another episode and talk about your experience with your viral release. But I think your book definitely found its fans, and so the next one is gonna be the next in the series.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, how many
Yep.
books are you planning there?
This is planned to be a trilogy, but you never know. My characters do have minds of their own, so we'll see what they say. And I do also have one prequel novella planned as well. So, like a trilogy of novels plus the prequel novella.
Sounds like a very, very solid plan. Okay. I think I forgot to ask you about your author heroes. So you said that you read a
Yeah.
lot as well in romantasy and stuff like that. Who are your author heroes?
Yeah, so I have three like main author heroes. I am trying to read a lot more indie books these days. Before I went indie, I didn't necessarily like think about whether an author I was reading was trad or indie. So we'll see. We'll see if I introduce a few more indie authors into this list in the future. But I really, really love Rebecca Yarros, Sarah J. Maas, and Sabaa Tahir. Those are my three favorite authors as of right now. So Rebecca Yarros and Sarah Maas, I just think they do an amazing job pulling readers into their stories and getting them so invested in both the plot and the characters in their worlds. Like if you look at the size of their fan bases and like how much those readers love the characters that these women created, like I would love to also be able to do that one day and have people who love my characters and my worlds that much as well. So like I'm one of those people that love their characters, love their worlds, and I would love to emulate that. And then also with Sabaa Tahir, I feel like she does that as well, but she has such gorgeous prose and excellent world building and character arcs as well on top of that. So they're amazing authors. If I could ever be counted in league with them, I could die happy.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't read the third one, but yeah, Sarah J. Maas, I think I quite liked. I've only read one series, but still, she does know how to kind of lure you into her world and kind of make you read a 600-page book and not even notice.
Yeah, the one thing she does a little bit sometimes is have like heavy world building in the beginning, which kind of slows the pace in the beginning. But like still, like she makes up for it in other areas. And the way she threads in little details throughout all of her series and books that interconnect in ways you could just never expect. And then when you make the connection, it like blows your mind. Like that's something else she does that I just think is so cool.
Okay, so we've discussed already that you've listened and participated in Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast, and you're using some resources for outlining. Any other podcast, YouTube channels, books, anything that you use for your craft and in general for writing?
So, as a member of the Story Lab, Savannah does a masterclass every month. So, I always listen to those just to continue with my learning and whatnot. But I find that if I look at too many resources like that, it kind of muddles up my ability to just write. So, like, I'm someone who doesn't want too much structure. I think the story grid structure that I use is very helpful. But for example, I tried to look at Save the Cat and it just confused me because I already used this other structure. So, like, I don't want to make it complicated. So I really just stick to this one structure I have. And then I lean heavily on my beta readers and critique partners to continue to learn and grow. And now that I have reviews from real readers, I do plan to use those to get better as well.
Yeah, I completely agree about like the saturation of information everywhere. Just like you try to map your story to, I don't know, romancing the beat, and then suddenly you look in story grid and then that one doesn't work anymore. So you have to fix it like that. There's so many rules, and just honestly,
Yeah.
sometimes all that helps is just letting someone read it and tell you, is it interesting or is it boring?
Yeah, exactly. And then you work on those areas where again, also you want to get opinions from more than just one beta reader, or at least like in my opinion, you should do that because look at the common threads of feedback. And like when I look at my reviews or have someone help me look at my reviews, I'm going to be looking for those common threads of feedback because those are the things you really need to work on versus just like one person's opinion.
Yeah, of course, of course. Okay, so where can my listeners find you? What are your handles? How can they find your books as well?
So my books are listed for sale on Amazon and on my website. I believe they can also be found on most major book retailers online, like barnesandnoble.com, for example. They are also in Kindle Unlimited. And my handle for everything is Medrek Writes, MEDREK WRITES. But I am, like I said, mostly active on Instagram. I I migrate over to TikTok once in a while, but it's mostly, not that often. And then my website is medrikwrites.com.
Okay, so even the website is your handle. That's easy. That's very easy
Yeah,
for anybody
make it
to.
easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Okay. That was so helpful.
Awesome. Good.
I've learned so much. I'm sure anybody who listens will learn so much. I am now thinking of well, not exactly nerd fam, but like just working with a company to maybe just create some hype and some pre-launch packages for any release that I'm trying to make, because really it did look like, wow, this is the the new hot book, and everybody's reading it, and
Yeah.
everybody has these like PR boxes, and it looked like so much fun. I think it's a great thing, and it was so good to hear about your process, and it was very validating to know that you're also a very busy person and you find time to write.
Yeah, you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to me. I'm so grateful that I've met you. Well, on Instagram or on the podcast. How did I find you? Actually, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
I think my brain is toast by the end of the day. Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. I hope to see you after your next release as well. And good luck with everything, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun and it was an honor to be a guest. So have a great day as well.
Thank you. Thank you. If you like what you hear so far, please consider subscribing and tune in for the next episode. If you have burning questions about writing you'd like to have answered, head to my Instagram page at kkalbabooks and leave me a message. Or use my email k.k.alba.books@gmail.com. If you'd like your favorite author to answer your question on my show, again, head to my Instagram or email me to let me know which author you'd like me to invite, and I'll try to get over my anxiety and do it. On the other hand, if you're an author who's published at least one book, traditional or indie, and you'd like to become a guest, well, you know what to do by now. Message me and let's get to know each other.